The second paradigm shift is a shift on the relationship between parenting, education, and church. All right. Over the summer, I got into a conversation on the intellect and the Christian life with a couple of guys in my church. And one of them is a dad. He's got 3 elementary school kids. He kind of downplays it. He says, well, look, it's great for those that get into it, you know, bless them. But for me, I've got my story, and I'm going to share my story for anybody that asks, but I don't really get into answering objections. So I kind of thought about it. I didn't say anything right then. But later, next day, I said, okay, for you, fair enough, but what about for your kids? Okay? They're getting bombarded by this stuff day in, day out. You don't even know they have it. Neither do they, actually. If they can't come to you for help with these challenges because, you know, you're not building your own intellect, like where else can they go? And so he kind of, in a half-joking manner, he points to another guy in the conversation, and he's like, yeah, this is a guy that works with youth in our church. And so, yeah, this was a joke, but I think this reflects a common way of thinking that we really need to question. It's an over-reliance on pastors for discipling kids. Now, pastors are great. I'm not denigrating them. They do yeoman's work. But you get your kid for like an hour or 2 a day, or a week, right? And we over-rely on schools for intellectual education, okay? Now, hear me out. Let me describe what I'm talking about here. Kids, especially if they're going to public school, and especially if they're on social media, they're getting bombarded by lies. Most really don't know the degree to which this is happening in their school. Public school is not neutral. Okay? Secular is not synonymous with neutral. Every school has a worldview. And in public schools, it's antithetical to Christian discipleship. It's immersive in nature. Now, don't get me wrong. I realize that not all families can do homeschool or private school. All right? There's a lot of good reasons to send your kids to public school. This is an area of charity. My family's done public school in the past, and we probably will do in the future, to be honest. But no matter what schooling you choose, all I'm saying is go into it with eyes wide open. All right? Be honest with what you're doing. You know, you're sending your kid to be mentored and discipled by a system that's coming from a different place. You know, you're sending them to be salt and light, and the system is doing everything it can to beat that out of your kids. So this is one of those reasons why I think that whole salt and light thing is a little misguided. I think we don't really realize that it's not just a mission field, it's also a formative institution. Okay? And for those that choose homeschool or private school, recognize that's not a panacea either. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more in a second about this, but even kids in those environments, you got to be on your A game. Okay? You're still the educator. And my whole point here is that if you're not educating yourself, this is probably preaching to the choir, I don't know. But if you're not educating yourself and you're to give them solid answers to those lies, where else can they go? You know, they're not going to stop having questions. They're just going to stop asking you the questions. And they're going to go to Google. They're going to go to their peers. Or, God forbid, they're going to go to TikTok. And you won't like what they get there, but you won't have a say in it. Okay, so you gotta train yourself up, and you gotta be ready. Okay, realize the math is not on our side. So they get 2 to 3 hours in a church. They get 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in a secular discipleship environment. You add the discipleship from social media on top of that, it's not a fair fight at all. You've got to level the playing field with it by being intentional and consistent in the home with what you do in discipleship. Okay? And I say intentional and explicit because they might not initiate with you often enough or even know what to ask if you're not going to them and teaching them actively. Okay? And so neglecting all this grooms them for secularism, or at least a very neutered faith. Okay? So in past ages, you know, maybe only the overly academic Christian or the seminary student would get these challenges. But today, because of the internet, and because of the environment our kids are in, all kids are getting these challenges. It is inevitable. And so we have to prepare them actively for the challenges that await. And this puts apologetics, philosophy, theology, all of that stuff at the very center of our discipleship in the home. You're giving your kids a life raft when you give that stuff to them. Okay? It's not the only thing we've got to do, but it's one of the things. And then